Hey, Melissa.
Hey.
How are you today?
Good.
Yeah. We are on another episode. And it is, you know what? This is one that I think is very maybe useful for our time, right? It's something that's we're very current event kind of thing.
Yeah. It's something that we see often, you know, in talking with our patients. I think a lot of people share the same struggle. So yeah, I think it'll be a good topic.
Yeah, and I realized we didn't even talk about what the topic was. Okay.
Drum roll.
That's right. So today, what we want to focus on is this idea of weight and health, or maybe the fancy words, the intersectionality between weight and health. So mainly, and we'll always tell a story about what brought us to this point, but talking about weight and health, how they link together, how they don't link together, maybe our obsession a little bit with the matter of weight, maybe where did that obsession come from, and then how can we how can we hack our brains, right, to break that obsession?
Yeah. So yeah, where do we start? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yes. So let's start with where they come from. Okay. So Melissa, we have a lot of patients and we have a lot of friends in the medical field. And one of our friends was a pharmacist. You know, we were talking about Ozempic and Mounjaro, and this is insatiable appetite for people to get this shot at any cost, right? And of course, it has a role. You know, the drug itself does work very, very well for diabetes and heart protection and stuff like that. But I've never seen a drug off-label used like this.
Right.
Yeah. And then, so as we were talking, you know, we're talking about people not being able to get it and who's coming to get it. And the pharmacist told me, like, you know what? You would think it's the people with a BMI of 40 coming to get it. Or, you know, high blood pressure, heart disease. But no, all the people that are coming to get it in her pharmacy are perfectly normal weight women that may just want to lose another 5 or 10 or maybe 15 pounds.
Yeah.
And so that got me kind of wondering, because this is now beyond like health. And even in our experience, people that are coming to ask for it aren't always the people you think that may need it.
Right.
But something different.
Right. Yeah. And I think this obsession with weight and a number to get to, whether it's a number on the scale or even, you know, healthcare has been guilty of, you know, using BMI for everything and, you know, just things like that are all weight driven. And so that's part of it, you know, even in health class, we learn about ideal body weight and BMI and what a 5'4" woman should weigh. And by the way, I think it's like 120 pounds or something.
Yeah.
So everybody, like, women will spend their entire adult lives trying to get to that weight, which is really, unattainable for most people. Or if they do attain that, it's usually by drastic measures or just like chronically under eating and over exercising and, you know, really kind of not having any quality of life because of it.
Yeah. So. And it is, I think that's the whole point of today's podcast it is an obsession. It is going beyond just being healthy. This is going to almost like cosmetic, sometimes even borderline like eating disorder type of environment that we're seeing. And I would say that, you know, Melissa, it's so interesting, like looking at history, you know, looking at this idea of weight and health. You know, if you look at old paintings and stuff like that, you didn't see a bunch of stick thin people. Because back in the day, you know, being, you know, not morbidly obese, but being heavier is actually a sign of like wealth, right? And even in Asian cultures, like they wanted the men to be like really like roly-poly because that meant like, hey, you didn't have to work in the field. You had more money because you could actually buy things. Because back in the day, and even till to today, starvation continues to be one of the biggest dangers to mankind, you know? And so with the processed food industry and big food, we've essentially fixed that problem. But the brain, you know, that part had been fixed, and we'll talk about that later. But Melissa, I would say probably in the age of advertisements, magazines, that started becoming more and more of a, hey, people started paying more attention to how they look, how their body type looked. because it's not just about reproducing, you know, it's about maybe, I don't know, say vanity, but how you look outwardly, you know?
Right.
And even when we were growing up, I mean, Melissa, some of the models that we saw in magazines, because this is before the internet.
Yeah, we had to look at magazines.
That's right. Yeah, you look at magazines at the grocery store. I mean, they are really, the girls were so thin.
Yeah, yeah. And yes, and I think we have seen some improvement there, like we kind of touched on maybe a little bit last week, where there is a movement for, you know, strong is beautiful and things like that. But, and I think there was kind of a push for that, along with more like just body positivity and things like that as social media has evolved. Because really when, you know, social media took off, everybody, you know, puts their, you know, best image to the forefront. And those that are like aesthetically pleasing is what we're drawn to. And those are the people that become influencers. Because I think just, and that's a whole nother layer of psychology, because we are built to like find things aesthetically pleasing, and that's how we're attracted to others and different things like that. But there's a point where it goes too far, where it's just unattainable for most. And I think as social media evolved, we did start to see some, you know, some push for, you know, really like body positivity at different sizes and different shapes. We saw, you know, different companies advertising with like real people as their models instead of, you know, the supermodel, you know, at least the ones that we used to always see. Now they're using real people in their ads and things like that. So there was some of that, but then these medications came along, and a lot of people have found it as like the missing link. You know, maybe it's a 140-pound woman who is perfectly healthy, and 140 pounds, by the way, is perfectly fine. But maybe it's the person that always thought they were supposed to weigh 125 pounds, or that if they did, you know, all their problems would be solved. And so they finally have a tool on how to get there. And here comes Ozempic, Mounjaro, whatever, to make it attainable finally.
Yeah, I think you're right on to something there, Melissa, because, and I guess to put a side note, we're not talking about like your BMI is 45, you're perfectly healthy. Like there is, we're not talking about the people who are metabolically unhealthy, who are way too big, you know, because that causes its own problems, knee pains, back pains, all these other things. But what I think you're right, what we've noticed is that now we have a tool. It's almost like all that body positivity went away, right? So it's like, let's say a woman, you know, she's had a couple of kids, body's different now, right? And before it's like, well, plastic surgery will tummy tuck it. And of course, that's thousands of dollars that go in on a knife. That's only for the wealthy people. But, you know, some women are like, okay, well, you know, I don't really want to put forth all this effort it takes just to get 10 pounds down. But I like my body. I'm comfortable with my body. I'm working out. I'm exercising. I'm active. I can be strong. I can still do all the things. And you could see that social media was even starting to push that direction. And even some influencers showing photos of them not flexed and not post, you know. But now we have a tool that's $1,000 a month. So not quite going under the surgery, that can get you that last 5-10 pounds by literally starving you. Let's just, chemical anorexia, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what people maybe don't realize or understand. And we've talked about this, so we don't have to rehash it. But yeah, I mean, basically, it just makes you not want to eat as much. And so, yeah, you're putting yourself into a calorie deficit, and then, yeah, you're losing weight. You can lose other weight other than fat, though. And so is it the healthiest method? Is it something that needs to be maintained long term? Like, is someone who weighs 125 pounds going to stay on this for the rest of their life just to kind of keep that extra 10 pounds away? You know, there's a lot of implications that, you know, we haven't hashed out yet. But even when some of these people are reaching a certain BMI, they come to us, they're worried that, they can't get it anymore from whatever weight loss clinic they were going to. It's like, well, I mean, we just have to keep implementing, good lifestyle measures and kind of wherever we land, where we're both healthy metabolically and, physically in the way that we can do things without pain and, do what we need to do without limitation. Like that's where we need to be, and it may look 10 pounds more than what you learned on a growth chart in grade school or whatever, and that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. Bodies are different. Every body is different. And I think, and we'll kind of talk about how to do this as we wrap up later, but really kind of focusing on doing things for a reason to feel like happy and healthy rather than the constant chase or pursuit of a certain number.
Yeah. And I think today's podcast, that's the main focus. Like, how do this is beyond health. This is going beyond just being metabolic healthy to almost like an obsession, an addiction. And, this is so interesting because I was reading this book and listening to a lecturer. His name is Dr. Brewer. He is a Brown psychiatrist at Brown University. And his big thing is on addictionology. And it's so fascinating because I'm always interested in obsessions, like when people are obsessed with tobacco or they're obsessed with alcohol or they're obsessed with sugar or foods or addiction. But most of the time, I never really clumped weight into that obsession until I saw what was happening with the shot. I mean, the panic people have when they can't get it. It's almost like it's not cocaine now. I mean, it's okay.
You would think it might be. Maybe it's laced.
Yeah. What people are running for. I mean, it is pretty impressive. And essentially what he says in his thesis is most of our behaviors and our habits are all a form of reward, right? It's positive feedback or negative feedback. And that positive, negative feedback is deep in the brain. I mean, it's not the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is what helps us think and reason, and it makes us higher than just caveman, like lower species. But this reward center is basic. And even so, for example, back in the day, when we go and we are starving and we're hunter gatherers, right? We hadn't eaten anything in a while, and we find a bush of berries, and we eat that, and that reward center goes, "Hey, hunger is bad. I eat this, I feel better. I need to remember where this is." So that's kind of that basic memory. So that's part one. Then as we evolve, maybe we start realizing like maybe sadness is not good. Sadness doesn't feel good, just like hunger doesn't feel good. And when I eat this, I feel better. And so that's kind of how we started attaching maybe food, not just to health, but food to emotions. Now, if you take that a step further, you can apply this to multiple different things, right? Tobacco, I'm cool. All the ads for tobacco back in the day was cool, right? You can hang out with your friends, go to the bar, whatever. And so really quickly, our brain would associate that tobacco, have fun. So tobacco, good, And to speak further on that, our brains were wired to really be able to identify things that are good and things that are bad really quickly. Because back in the day, if we saw wolf, you can't be sitting there with your frontal cortex kind of reasoning like wolf, good or bad, like, because you'd be dead. You had to assign good or bad to something really, really fast. Okay, now fast forward to now. You click on social media, you see a girl that is lean, thin, doesn't matter if there has a filter, doesn't matter we have apps. I can adjust your nose, I can adjust your waist size, I can make your boobs bigger, I can do anything I want to your body on a photo. But the moment they see that, they see likes, right? And that like, when you get on a photo, it's like a dopamine hit. Like, oh, people like this. Oh yeah, we used to get dopamine hits from just a few people, but now from when we were growing up, it was celebrities. Like, wow, look, they go to the fancy parties because they look this type of way. And so our brains, especially as children, in a young age, starts really associating, look this way, get this reward. Look this way, get the reward. And you add social media in it, and it's really like, boom. And the reason I brought social media is because this Ozempic thing really started on a TikTok. Like woman was like, I was giving my shots and I lost weight. And the brain instantly went back to that beyond the frontal cortex, like lose weight, feel good, and fast forward 3 years or however many years, here we are. And it is kind of getting out of control, but it's so funny because it's almost like this is a basic brain hack that somehow is being hacked to chase this number versus just health.
Right. Yeah. And society supports it so much. And I think that's where, part of this comes from. Anytime someone, say, does lose 10 pounds and then someone else compliments them on, oh my gosh, you look so good. What have you been doing? That one, reinforces whatever it was that they did. They could have had the stomach flu and been like deathly ill for a week, but they just got complimented. So they're going to have to work, like starve themselves just to maintain that.
Yeah.
Or, they could have been just really like doing healthy habits and, achieve that in a healthy way, something that is sustainable for them. But that same feedback that tells us this is good, I've got to keep doing it, whether it's coming from a good place or a bad place, is constantly reinforced.
Yeah.
And we see it in media, whether it's social media or, TV or whatever, all the time when there's a celebrity that bounced back instantly from having a baby. And it's like, oh, well, that's something that I should be able to do then.
Yeah.
Or, there's all different scenarios that just get like blasted on headlines that are supposed to be a positive thing or like, portrayed as something positive. And it teaches us that we have to do that to have that same good feedback.
Correct. Yeah.
That's a lot to unpack, and that's probably more than we'll be able to like sort through, but there's just so much that goes into why we think the way that we do and then the habits that form because of it.
Absolutely.
And I think recognizing that you have a problem is one step.
Yeah.
And there was an article we looked at this week, but it kind of listed some things that may indicate you have like more of an obsession on your weight or size. And that's things like constant like body checking in the mirror, constant weighing. Like, do you weigh more than one time a day? Or do you, do you adjust yourself on the scale to make it go down a pound or up a pound?
Yeah.
It's things like that it's like, that's not normal behavior, and that is taking over your life. And I think like there's more people out there that are doing those things and just thinking like, well, I'm just doing this to try to stay as healthy as I can. Yeah. But really that's not health, if we have to do that,
Yeah. No, I've seen it and I've even heard it, right? It's like I have friends who will not go to birthday parties because there might be cake there or there might be cookies there. So they're literally missing family events because the idea of eating something like this is just so scary. I had one friend of mine who was so afraid of gluten that she wouldn't take communion at church. And I was like, what?
Yeah, and wasn't like, didn't have a true like allergy or celiac or anything. Right. Just because it was bad. Yeah. And that is another sign too, restricting certain food groups or avoiding events, due to what you're going to be faced with, or avoiding certain situations with family members. Like, are they going to ask me what I'm eating, or, different things like that. Right. If you feel like your life is being controlled by your weight and it doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily something that has to be good or bad. We really are just looking at how do we find happiness with where we are in a truly healthy state. Yes. And we're not saying either, like you said, like BMI of 45 or whatever is not necessarily going to be a person's healthiest weight. Right. And you'll know that. We're not saying like, if you are truly overweight and unable to do things that you want to do, that you shouldn't want to lose weight or try to lose weight, absolutely. Like if you get short of breath when you're trying to do things, or you're your mobility is affected by joint pain or just your body habitus in general, and you want to lose weight so you can feel better and do those things, that's perfectly fine.
Absolutely, yeah.
But also know that, say, a 200-pound woman trying to achieve 120 pounds may not be the best path for health.
Yeah.
Maybe that person makes some good, healthy lifestyle habits and gets down to 160 pounds. That's perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
You're going to be, healthier metabolically. Your joints are going to feel better. You can do the things you want to do without getting short of breath. That's fine. You shouldn't feel like a failure because you couldn't get to 120.
Absolutely. No, that is perfectly stated, because I think, before we get canceled, right? We're not here to polarize one way or the other, but your example is exactly right. Like, we'll have somebody who did great, right? They go from 200 to 160. Their joints feel good. They feel strong. They look great. They feel good. There is no need to add another element to get you to 120 when your body metabolically is doing perfect, you're active, things like that. And that obsession to, okay, well, I'm not going to do anything else, or I'm going to have to need this shot for the rest of my life to push myself down to that. And then when we don't get there, we get depressed, we get down on ourselves. That is the thing we're trying to break, and then part of our philosophy with mindfulness is, yes, we can always improve, but you do need to be kind of satisfied where you are. Like the constant negative speaking, the constant negative feedback, that's not healthy.
Right. Yeah. And I think the sooner you can get there, the better, as far as that mindset of, as long as you're fueling your body with nourishing foods and doing activities that you can enjoy or make you feel good, as far as, exercise type activities or walking, as long as you're doing those things out of the right place, whatever weight you land at, that may just be like your body's happy weight.
Right.
Now, we see all the time people that may be, wanting to lose weight, but yet, they do have unhealthy habits that, are definitely hard to break. And there's a lot to work through with that. But when you do get into a routine of just finding that moderation, there's no good or bad foods, really.
Right.
Yeah, we don't need to eat certain foods all the time, but we also shouldn't miss somebody's birthday party because there might be cake there too.
Correct.
There's got to be some moderation. There's got to be some balance there. Otherwise, you can easily develop an unhealthy relationship with food. And as much as food is like part of culture and experience and things like that, if it's all about reaching a number on the scale,
right,
you're going to miss out on life, and you're going to spend your whole life chasing something that may not be attainable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, don't not lift weights, because let's say you lift weights, you look fantastic, clothes fits great, but the scale went up a little bit because now you're more muscle dense, that you now like, I gotta stop lifting. Like, that should not be the mindset that we have.
Oh yeah, that used to be me. I mean, really?
Really?
Like, yeah, like that. And I would lift weights, but like just very minimally here and there. Every time I ever tried to do it like really consistently, my weight might go up a few pounds. And like by a few pounds, it's like, that's, it feels like too much, especially when you've worked so hard to like stay at a certain level. So it's like scary when it first happens. And then, yeah, like when you exercise, or lift weights, like you're going to build like glutes and things like that. So your pants are going to fit tighter, and, God forbid you have to go up a size in anything. Like that is like, and I know I'm not alone because I've talked to other women about this all the time, but it's like, we will stop ourselves from doing something that is completely healthy and beneficial for our future, like our bone health, our strength, our other abilities, just because we have to like change a pant size or, the scale tips a little bit up. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Yeah.
So yeah, taking a break from all of that just to like do the habits that are healthy. Maybe don't pay as much attention to the numbers. Put the scale away for a while and just do what's good for your body. And where you land is where you land. And that's okay.
Yeah. Well, now Melissa, I want to know, how did you break that mindset? How did you?
I mean, I guess I was just at a point in my life where I just knew this was something that I needed in my routine. And if it meant, not losing weight or, even maybe like fluctuating up a pound or two here and there, like I just had to accept it. I also put the scale away, which I still struggle with because for the longest time, the scale for me just helped me to know where I was at. Like we do see people all the time who don't weigh and they'll come in for like a yearly checkup and they've gained 20 pounds and they have no idea.
Correct.
So the scale is a useful tool, but when it becomes like an obsession, it can be very unhealthy. So yeah, I'll check in every like couple of weeks to see where I'm at. But, as far as like once a day, twice a day, like checking in to see what's happening. Like
let me take off my earrings.
Exactly. It is absurd. Like, I mean, the things that we do to ourselves and why? Like, why?
That's right. That's it. That is okay. And that actually brings us to our final section, which I think is the most important. The question you asked, why? So this point, how do you break free? That's, I think, the key. Like, how do you break free? And I'm going to start with one, and then we're going to talk about the other things that we can do. But the first one is asking why. Like, why am I doing this? And so speaking back to that psychiatrist, he says, you can't overpower that primitive brain in your head. Like your frontal brain ends up always serving the primitive brain, right? And so, like, for example, when you and your spouse are arguing and you shouldn't say that, but you're so mad, that primitive brain where that anger is going to overpower your frontal cortex. You well knowing that I'm going to be in trouble after I say this, and so, but the way to kind of hack that is actually something called curiosity. So, everyone's like, oh, curiosity. Okay. Curiosity killed the cat, but curiosity is also what allows us to maybe test the waters of what we've associated already, right? So, for example, let's say we've already associated, wolf is bad, right? But in the movies, you always see like everybody's running from the wolf, but there's one kid, they're like, what if I pet that wolf? And then of course, usually in the movies, they turn out okay. But in real life, you're like, probably got eaten. But, but that curiosity is what makes you stop for a second and rethink what you think you already know. Like rethink what's already programmed. So for example, we have in our brain programmed that this size is the size you need to be. You look fantastic in this size. Your friends are jealous with you. The husband may notice, although husbands really don't notice very much. They're like, oh, you look great, honey. But if that's already programmed, one way to deprogram that is to be curious, like, why do I have to be like this? Like, why do I have to be on this size? And oftentimes when you kind of, we in healthcare call that technique mindfulness, being back in the present, being back in like, okay, well, I'm not in a model photo shoot. My kids love me for who I like. They don't care what, my husband or a spouse loves me for who I am. And so when you start reasoning, then that link between positive reinforcement and weight starts to distance a little bit. So it's not always positive. Like, and we've seen this work very well in tobacco. So, right, I was cool when I smoke. I'm hanging out with friends. Now they sit there and they're smoking. They're like, it's 10 o'clock at night. This thing stinks to high heaven. I smell horrible. No one is like, hey, let's have another beer. I'm not talking to a girl. Like, why am I still doing this? And usually based on the studies that he did, it took a couple of sessions. But just like you said, why? Why are we doing this? And usually when you ask that does kind of help distance that link a little bit.
Yeah, like why why do you feel hungry all the time? Like, I mean, really, like, why are you starving yourself? Why are you skipping events that may have food that don't fit your program or whatever? Why are you running like 6 miles on, a Tuesday morning or whatever? Is it because you truly love running? Fine, that's great. But if you do it just because you're afraid that you're going to be fat without it, like, that's a completely different thing. So,
Absolutely.
like coming at, ask yourself why. Is this something that I enjoy, that, whether it's food that nourishes you or an activity that makes you feel good, is it truly something that's good for you, and good for your body,
Right.
And then if you can't really answer that, or if it's not, maybe like reevaluate what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think the difference between, hey, I love running, I want to be out there, versus I ate a cupcake, that's 300 calories, I got to run for another 30 minutes.
Exactly.
Like, that is a very different mindset. I think the second thing, and this is something we'll probably talk a little bit more, is reevaluating what defines health. Of course, weight is part of it, and it is an important part of it, but it is not the only part when it comes to things like lifespan and health span. So, talking about exercise, yes, you lifted weights, so your scale went up. But look, you can lift, you can carry things, you can, you can do things that you couldn't do. Your joints feel stronger. Like, that is a sign of health. Just as much, if not more, than just a number on the scale itself.
Yeah, like, find other ways to measure your health other than the scale. What things functionally can you do better than you used to be able to do? Are you able to get from point A to point B without getting short of breath? Right. Are you able to, stoop down to the floor and pick something up without hurting your knees, or without, toppling to the side? There's different measures of health that don't have to have anything to do with your weight. Is your metabolic health good at your checkups? There's all kinds of things that we can measure health by without a number.
Yeah. And I think, when we take all these things into consideration, like, hey, you know what? Yes, weight is an important number, but it's not the only one. There are other things, that we can do. And even in our clinic, I feel like we high five a lot of people, even if the weight doesn't change much, maybe only 5 pounds, but they've dropped their A1C, they have completely reversed their diabetes, they have done all these things. That is something to be proud of and something to celebrate, more than just like, hey, you didn't lose 20 pounds, you only lost 5. And like I said, the second thing is really just ask why. Like, stop for a second. The next time you step on the scale for the 14th time, or you like, oh, wait, I got to take off my hat because my hat weighs something. And you're like, oh, the hat doesn't.
Empty the pockets, like right. The keys and the change, all the things.
Yeah. Just ask why.
What difference is like the 0.25 pound gonna make? Like, why does it matter? Yeah. And people will say all the time, like, when we get their weight, and it's like, say, okay, 160. They're like, well, I was 158 at the house before I put clothes on and everything. Okay, it's okay. Like, it's 2 pounds. It's okay.
That's right.
And that just, it just highlights the obsession that we all have with that dang scale.
Yes. Well, okay. So, Melissa, that's perfect. I mean, I think this is such a helpful, timely episode, because this is something that, like you said, a lot of women deal with. And it can be a source of insecurity, depression, anxiety. It can be a source of wasting your money and dumping, like, another detox, another this, another that. And you're just like, what are we doing here? So to kind of wrap up, I think today's episode really focusing on why. Yes, weight is important. Weight can be linked to health, but it's not the only measure of health. And sometimes the obsession over weight can make you less healthy than if you don't obsess. And then, of course, we talked about maybe the basic neuropsychology of why that has become such a thing for us. And then we wrapped up with how to maybe dissociate that little bit, break that little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. I think a few things that you can kind of do right away, like just, being more mindful about why you're doing the things that you're doing, paying attention to, how we feel when we eat and when we exercise. If it's always, like coming from this like fear of, will this affect my weight in one way or another? Or, from, a place of this is what I'm supposed to be eating, or, different things like that. Just pay attention to why you're doing the things that you're doing. Measuring health a little bit differently. And then finally, like taking a break from the scale. Just try it. Try measuring your health by like how you feel. And you don't want to ignore the scale. And I will say, if someone is trying to lose weight, the scale can be a very useful tool. And, weekly weigh-ins are an excellent tool to kind of make sure that you're staying accountable and on track and things like that. But when you're doing all the right things to where you feel, good physically with your exercise, you feel nourished with your meals, whatever weight you land at when you're truly taking good care of yourself, like that just may be your weight. And as long as you're happy and healthy, it's okay. If it's, 10 pounds above what you feel like would be ideal,
right?
It's okay. We just have to let it go. And just knowing that our bodies change. Like while we were researching this, one of the articles that I read is most girls, go on their first diet during adolescence, like age 15, 16. And I remember that, like as a teenager, like, getting some of my mom's like diet pills, just like the supplements or whatever. This was the 90s. So diet pills were like everywhere.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't realize that, girls are supposed to gain like even up to like 40 pounds during puberty. They go from being a girl to a woman.
Yeah.
But like somewhere along the line, they think, oh my gosh, this is too much somehow, some way. So like that's the cycle that starts like in our teenage years. And then we think we're supposed to stay that weight the rest of our lives. And we have children, we go through menopause, we do all these things that are going to affect our weight and our body size. And again, like that's okay. We're not supposed to look like a 12-year-old girl the rest of our lives.
Please, yes.
Yeah. Like, but that's like what people think, I think,
Yeah. And it's so funny and we'll wrap this up here because I don't think the guys usually are pushing a lot of this. I mean, of course, guys comment on women and they, of course, like we said before, there are attractive things that, we look for, but whether somebody is 5 pounds over, I don't think guys, I was like, what? I don't know. I have so many patients and friends who are like, they'll go get a lip injection and the guys just walk by. She's like, do you notice anything different? They're like, your haircut? So guys are pretty simple creatures. We don't. But yes, I think, like you said, it is so interesting that, and I'm hoping that as my daughter gets older, that this culture does start to improve. From now, like being strong is beautiful, like being lean. And we talked before, like things don't help that. Girl sports, like my daughter's a gymnast, the clothes don't help that. There is going to be some idea of comparing the bodies with other girls. And then, but hopefully that idea of like, okay, I'm happy with who I am. I don't have to strive to be somebody different will become more permeable throughout culture.
Yeah, I hope so. Comparison is such a battle that we all face. And, there's that saying, comparison is the thief of joy, because really someone can be like really happy, like in their body. And then they'll see someone else that, maybe like, weighs less or, looks better in a certain outfit or different things like that. And it kind of restarts that cycle of, oh, well, maybe I should have tried harder. Maybe I should have done what she's doing. And it starts all over.
Yes. Yes. Well, hopefully this is great episode. Now for our listeners, we have our challenge going on right now. So you should be doing week 2. So pound those push-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, this challenge's goal is not for weight loss, more that, hey, you know what? You can do something.
Yeah.
You can be active and you can feel good at any place that you are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just to incorporate that anywhere.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Melissa. And I like your story. It is.
We didn't get too far into it, but yeah, I feel like I kind of talked
in
circles, but I think it's a lot of what, I see a lot of people struggle with similar things. So
Yes, it is. Yeah. So, all right.